What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Big Luke here, Man of the Free. Welcome to another episode of Man of the Free, Freedom of Mind, Money, and Media. That's the tagline. We are here with the one, the only, the famous, the infamous, the name that means money in your pocket, Chris Fernandez, the Pawn King. Hi, Chris.
How y'all doing?
Chris, I tend to start the show. I let people know who the guest is, you know, the typical intros, but more importantly, how we met. Do you remember? This is like pop quiz number one. You got any fucking clue how we met?
Not when you were 50 pounds lighter, I don't.
No?
No, or maybe 100 pounds lighter.
Yeah.
Where it,
Do you remember where the reintroduction happened later on?
Yeah, at the store right over the hill here.
When I was looking for a rock for the old lady's engagement ring?
You want me to disclose that? Yes.
Yeah, that's okay. You know, it's funny. It's funny that you say that. It's funny that a lot of people have kind of, they think it's taboo that I bought a diamond for my wife's engagement ring at a pawn shop. It just goes along with the theory that I have in life that people, places, and things in your network mean everything, right? So I went to a lot of jewelry stores. I went to, I guess they'll remain unnamed for professional courtesy, right? Sure. But I went to a lot of jewelry stores, and I met a lot of people, and I met a lot of real slick salespeople. I saw some nice rocks, but at some point it occurred to me that I was buying a stone that was mined out of the ground. Yep. Had no serial number. It had no, barcode. It had no brand name. It was a fucking stone, right? So would it really make a difference where this stone came from? So then I assessed, I've got X amount of dollars to work with. This was an earlier part of my life, in the beginnings of my, latter part of my life where I've experienced some success. And I had a limited budget to work with. You know, it was it wasn't like I was spending $500. It was a lot of money to me. But I felt to myself that I needed to go to where I could get the most value for my dollar. And I knew, that you knew what you were doing. I knew that a secondhand shop would possess a lot of jewelry that had been turned in, a lot of stones and stuff like that. And I ventured to think that I would get for a lot lesser dollar amount a much higher quality stone than I would from a commercial jeweler. So long story short, I bought a stone from you. It was a beautiful stone. You treated me very well. You found a really nice rock. It made a beautiful engagement ring. My wife is ecstatic. She was actually happy that I went about it the way I did because she ended up with a much larger, much higher quality stone than she would have if I took that same dollar amount to a commercial dealer. And it worked out well for us. So.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, it's not every day somebody comes in and with a big wad of cash and wanting to, buy a stone for their engagement ring. But we've evolved a lot since then, and it's happening more often now. And
is it really?
It's the word pawn for a lot of people in society. It's a name as old as anything you find in the Bible. It's been around. The profession's been around for forever. Mm-hmm. And it's, if you put the word pawn above your door, you might as well put the word mass murderer above your door, as far as a lot of people are concerned, which is really hilarious to me because, we're like the furthest thing from consumer unfriendly as you can get. But, convincing people of that has been an uphill battle. I've been doing it for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And, I've got a following. We've got a lot of customers. There's a lot of people that, have gotten to know us and, through being on radio and stuff like that and just kind of just visiting the stores. We try to make them as much as, consumer friendly as possible. You would feel comfortable bringing your kids in there.
Yeah.
There's no questionable merchandise. There's no, pornography and
no second-hand sexual devices hanging on the desk.
No, or first-hand, or drug paraphernalia, or any of that stuff. So, and we don't even really sell anything by way of guns or weapons, but BB guns. But
so let me ask you a question. What does, and this is something that's always fascinated me, and a long, long time ago, I tried my hand at opening a pawn shop, a second-hand shop,
okay,
with a partner. It did very well, but for a short period of time because I happened to be very addicted to narcotics at the time. And when you're taking in a lot of cash.
Bad combination.
It's like a monkey selling bananas, that kind of thing.
Bad combination.
Yeah. So it didn't go so well, but I always wondered, and I never took the time because, at that time, of course, was not the time where you could pick up a device and say, hey, Siri, or hey, Google, phone's going to go off. There it goes. Tell me what I need to know and do so in very quick fashion. What does the word pawn mean as it pertains to a pawn shop?
Well, in a traditional pawn shop, you would bring something that you covet, and you wouldn't want to part with it permanently. So you'd say, I'd like to get a loan on this item. Maybe you don't have another avenue that you can't go to the bank.
Right.
You know, they're not going to give you a loan on your gold chain or your watch.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll come to a pawn shop and say, you know, I just need short-term money, and then you would be paying a monthly accrued interest rate on it. The way that we do it, because the state of New York is so wonderful to work with, and you know, I'm happy to live here, but the process by which to run a pawn shop in New York, unless you're in Yonkers, upstate New York, is very difficult. The interest rates are not enough to actually make any kind of decent profit. So what we do is we take in items. People say they don't want to part with them permanently. We allow them first access. So in other words, we're buying it, and we're reselling it back to the same customer. So we're going to give them 30 days to rebuy their item back. They essentially put it on layaway, and they're paying zero interest. It's a predetermined, so there's no interest involved whatsoever. There's just a predetermined price that they agree to before they leave the door. Hey, I would sell this to the public for $200, but I'm going to discount it for you and sell it to you for $140. You see, so I'm still making profit, not making as much profit as I would if I would have bought it outright.
Sure.
But this customer might come back to me and do it 6 months from now.
Right.
So now I've been able to do business with this customer, provide a service. I'm not hitting them over the head. They're not, you know what I mean? They feel good about it. So it's a win-win situation. You know, there are townships that have required me to acquire a pawnbroker license. So I do have pawnbroker licenses in specific townships where it's required, but I have no loans. I don't give loans.
Right.
I don't want to follow the bouncing ball and figure out the calculated daily interest, and it's another job. You
essentially go ahead.
When they sell it to me, that's what they're essentially doing.
Selling
I
you the
own it.
item.
I have no obligation to sell it back to them.
Gotcha.
It's basically, at that point in time, it becomes a handshake agreement. The only thing they get is a layaway slip that says they put this item on layaway, that they can come back and claim it. But I have no legal obligation even to provide them that item at that point.
Gotcha.
I mean, that wouldn't be very good for my business. It wouldn't be the right thing to do for me to say, oh, yeah, well, screw you.
Not to mention it wouldn't hang around too long, I'm sure.
No, so, you know, it's evolved into that, but the typical, essentially you're doing a very similar activity. It's just without, you know why the state really likes it, though, the way that we do it here is they're continuously collecting sales tax, kind of like your business.
Yep.
You sell a used car, you buy a used car, you sell a used car, you collect sales tax on behalf of the state.
Yep.
That same car comes back to your lot, and you sell it again, you collect sales tax on it again. How many times can one item be taxed?
If you ask the state of New York, that's the sideways 8. It's infinite.
Yeah, so that's the same thing with used merchandise.
Yeah.
There is no tax limitation on used merchandise. So the state actually makes out better. Mm-hmm. We're not making anything additional as a result of it, but,
right.
you know, we become basically at their service, collecting the tax on their behalf.
Yeah, you ever feel like kind of a pimp for New York State?
Yeah, kind of.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
What you said fascinated me. So, you know, my mind thinks in a creative entrepreneurial fashion because that's, you know, what I've been exposed to. So it sounds like in the beginnings of your career that you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that you knew of these pawnbroker laws and you creatively found a way to circumvent the interest calculation. I mean, you essentially said, okay, this is real simple. I can buy it. I can guarantee that you can buy it back, that you get first crack at it, essentially. You're not going to buy it for what I paid you for it because there would be no profit involved for me. But as long as you're okay selling me this item, is there still the 7-day hold?
There's a 7-day hold for everything.
For law enforcement purposes?
For everything.
Okay.
In some counties, it's 14.
Okay.
And in Batavia, New York, I think it's 10 or 12 days. I can't remember. Cortland's 2 weeks.
Okay.
So everywhere is different, but
was this your nice little caveat to the contract that you figured out?
The reason we started doing this was because people would come in. We named the business Pawn King. It was the simplest way to describe to the public. We used a little chess piece for the guy and put a crown on his head. So it's basically a pawn with a crown on his head. So, and then able to communicate to the public, say you're the little guy, you don't have much, you need a leg up. Mm-hmm. So we make the little guy the big guy. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. By turning the pawn into the king.
I like that.
So really, it was a play on words.
Very nice.
And what happened was a lot of people come in and say, well, I want to pawn this. I said, well, we don't do pawns here. Sorry. So I really want to get this back. So in the city of Syracuse, you can't be a secondhand dealer and have a pawnbroker license. It's written right into the secondhand dealer.
Really?
law.
Okay.
So, what we did was we said, well, somebody wants to buy their item back, I guess we hold it for 7 days anyway.
Right.
So it's not stolen 99.9% of the time in that case. If somebody's going to want to, get something
They're
back.
asking for it back. It's likely it's not
typically
hot.
it's not. Yeah. So what harm could it be? Go ahead and let them. And I've had to explain. We've taken loans from Small Business Administration for our business, and they won't loan to pawn shops. But they've given us small business loans because I've had to go before their whole committee and explain to them how I actually operate my business and why it's not a pawn loan. Because, you know what I'm saying?
I do. That's sad to me. It's sad to me that the state, essentially is willing to not be as, not, for lack of better words, I'm trying to get too extravagant with my vocabulary here. We'll just stick to the dumb meathead look. How they could not judge two businesses similarly because one is a pawnbroker. I mean, that's got to be some sort of prejudging or,
Well, they leave the local municipalities to determine whether or not you're allowed to even open a secondhand business. So the law can be broad when it comes to the state, but they allow the local municipalities to micromanage the law and say they kind of tweak it and make it more stringent.
I got you.
It's not less.
I actually misspoke, Chris. I meant to say the Small Business Administration. You said that they won't lend to a pawn shop, a pawnbroker?
That's what I've been told again and again. Banks in general will not lend to a pawnbroker because they feel, and I don't know if this is accurate, they feel that they're lending to a competitor because essentially they're loaning money to an institution that loans money.
Gotcha.
Which I don't do, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So it's once you circumvented the whole, loan pawn shop thing.
Yeah.
That's when
I
you're
tried
able
to figure out it's something that would work for the consumer.
Yeah.
That falls under the, legal guidelines of what you're able to do as a small business. It'd be like somebody coming here and you can't do title loans, which would be great for somebody in your business. It'd be great for somebody in my business. You can't do title loans in New York. But if somebody came to you and said, I've got 2 cars. I really need some money. I don't really need this car. Can I sell you this car? Would you allow me to buy this car back from you? Why wouldn't you? You don't have to detail it. You don't have to scrub it. You don't have to do anything. All you got to do is stick it in one of your spots.
Yeah.
As long as they maintain insurance on it, let them come back and get it in 30 days. What's the difference? They signed the title over. You don't register it, right? You're just hand them back the title here.
Yeah.
And they pay you the
markup, the
that's
predetermined
it.
markup.
They're paying you the predetermined markup on essentially they sold you the item. You sold it back to them. The transaction technically. In order for that to work, in order for the state to be happy, you would have to run it through your books so that you would have to charge them sales tax on it when they came back.
There would be DMV interaction too, I guarantee you.
So that's where I think they've been because I deal with all faction of law enforcement, whether it's the sheriff's department, the district attorney's office, the attorney general's office. Yeah, everybody calls us for one thing or another. Social services contacts us. I mean, I'm serious.
No kidding. To do what? Try to procure an item?
They're trying to figure out if somebody's scamming the system. Like so-and-so collects XYZ from Social Security disability, but yet they're selling me $1,000 a month worth of used items. So what they want to figure out is how is this person acquiring this extra money and is it classified as income? So they have the right as a faction of law enforcement as a government to come in and pull all these records get transmitted to the government every day anyway. Everything I do gets immediately. You know what I'm saying?
So is there some sort of electronic medium for that? Because when I had mine, it was a marble composition notebook, and if they stopped by, they could look.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming.
And the police used to come in and they hang out at the counter for 3 hours going through your transactions and pointing to stuff on the floor. Where's the receipt for this? Where's the sheet for that?
Yeah.
And no, they can't. They don't do that anymore. It's a waste of manpower. And so there's a thing called Leads Online.
Okay.
To your question.
Yeah.
Everything gets like we just used to have to enter them in one at a time, but now because we do everything electronically, we just hit a button at the end of the day. It uploads everything, and anybody that's in law enforcement can, if they pay, they have to pay a subscription fee to this. I don't know how much it is.
Okay.
We don't have to pay a subscription fee to submit.
Okay.
They have to pay a subscription fee to access the data.
Okay.
So there's been some pushback there, where there's certain departments that'll come in and say, well, we don't have access to that. I'm like, well, just contact the state police because the state police have access to
Yeah,
it.
ask those guys.
You can work between departments, I'm sure.
Interdepartmental cooperation, I'm sure, is commonplace every day, right?
You know, it's gotten a lot better, and you know, most of the time, seldom do the police show up unless they're there to pick something up. But
Okay.
everything's already negotiated ahead of time.
So a lot has changed.
They'll email and say, hey, this item came up flagged as questionable, or this one was determined as stolen, or this person, you know, they'll even hit us with people of interest, you know.
No kidding.
Somebody.
Have you seen this guy type of thing?
Yeah, and we'll give them whatever, you know, it's.
One hand washes the other. I get it. Let me ask you a question. What is the because I know the audience is wondering this right now. I'm sitting here with a pawnbroker, or I'm sorry, a secondhand dealer.
It's fine. Like I said, I have a pawnbroker license by the state through town of Luray, Evans Mills, New York.
No
They
kidding.
put it together just for me. Nobody else ever had one up
You
there.
know, it's amazing.
Where my store
you
is
say
across
that,
from
Chris.
your.
I was just going to
across from
say,
your dealership.
I've had a colorful array of experiences with the town of Luray up there. Boy, they are
They came in the day that I opened up.
guns ablazing.
Oh, your pawn shops are not allowed here. And I said, well, we're not a pawn shop. Well, yes, you are. It says pawn above your door. So now that's the name of the business, Pawn King. I explained to people the same way I explained to you how I came up with the name.
That's quite intelligent. I commend you for that.
But it gets the message across to the general public. Anyway.
I doubt many people are going to drive by and think that you're selling game pieces.
Even if they don't know that it's a chess piece as the logo, which
Right.
everybody I think is. I should have wore the chain with the logo on it. But anyway, I wore the other logo.
I like
there
it.
we go. Anyway, that's an
a
old
good logo.
right? But so after a while, the town contacted me and said, you know, you need to get a pawnbroker license. I said, you're welcome to come and examine my books. I'll show you. I have no loans in the loan column. It's blank.
Mm-hmm.
Even the program that I use is specifically centric for pawnbrokers.
Okay.
The loan column is blank. Because I'm not accumulating interest. I don't charge storage fees. There's none of that now.
Right,
There's about 45 other things you can charge when you're a pawnbroker that ours is just profit.
Okay.
You sell it to me for this. Here's the transparency. I'm gonna sell it back to you for
Pretty
that.
cut and dry.
You good with that?
Yeah.
Or I can sell it to Joe, next door neighbor, for $60 more.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? 'Cause
Yeah.
it's always a discount. They're still paying me a profit. And we have to keep the doors open.
And it's probably beneficial for you when somebody fulfills their obligation because the item's sold immediately. You recuperate your cash flow.
Yep.
It probably is not desirable to have an item that's not a hot seller sitting on the shelf.
No,
for the guy that didn't pay for it.
unless it's a piece of gold bullion.
You can melt down and turn into bullion
There
and
you go.
cash,
Unless
right?
it's bullion, I don't care. Yeah.
I was about to ask you.
Sorry.
No, not at all. This is that's the fun part of this environment, man. It's all freestyle. So I got to believe that my audience is wondering the same thing I am right now, which is, you drive by pawn shops, you hear the stories, you see the movies. Can you give me like the top 1 or 2 or 3 most dangerous instances or colorful, or what are the blockbuster memories that you have from being a pawnbroker?
Dangerous instances. Well, I got a guy that runs my Auburn store that, I don't know, I mean, it was absolutely dangerous for him. Guy comes in the store, he's looking at the DVDs, he calls him from behind the counter. He says, can you point out to me where the comedy section is? He goes, we don't really have stuff sorted in sections. So he goes to reach for a DVD. The guy pulls a knife out and holds it to his throat from behind, drags him over to the register, has him empty the register, gives him the money, and leaves. Which he did everything he was supposed to do. I'm not gonna, I don't want him to fight the guy.
Right. Yeah.
I just let him have the money, so the police caught the guy. The funny thing was, I felt this has only happened ever once. Okay, I'll go back. I'll go back. I'll touch that again in a minute. But
Okay.
The rest of that story goes like this. The police caught the guy like 15 minutes later. The van was seen on the plaza cameras where he jumped into and they ran off. They pulled over the van and they confiscated my money. Guess who didn't get their money back?
I don't even imagine you.
Me. Never got my money back. This
It was evidence,
This
right?
is a year ago.
Evidence.
Evidence. It's cash. How is it evidence? It doesn't make any sense. But anyway.
Quick side note, just a funny thing. I got arrested earlier in my years of addiction, possessing narcotics. Mind you, I had about 20 pills, narcotic painkillers, obviously for personal use, in my pocket. I also had $1,700 cash on me. That $1,700 cash was wrapped in a notarized promissory note that I had just signed to my Uncle Carl for $2,000. So I got the money, I went and bought drugs, $300 worth, had the rest of the cash on me, got arrested. Cops saw the pills, saw the money, saw the promissory note. I said, we're going to enter this into evidence. I said, how could you you can call my uncle. It's like the ink is still wet on the paper. This is not drug money. They say, well, you possess narcotics, we're going to take the money. You know, you said you can figure it out with the DA. If it ends up being real and it checks out, you can have your money back. Guess who never got his money back?
You.
Exactly. As you were, Mr. Fernandez. I thought that a colorful little insert to
man. So about a week later, this is funny because this all happened like during the peak of COVID. You know, we were deemed essential, so we were allowed to stay open.
You were deemed essential.
Yeah, so everybody had their masks on. Yeah.
Chris, I'm sorry. I have this little theme here.
Well, if you think about it, it even though it's not a loan business, it still falls under financial services because some people, the only way that they can get money is to bring stuff to sell it to the pawn shop.
Is that your honest and wholesome true belief?
Well, that's what the state agreed with me on.
Yeah.
So
well, the state also said that people need to buy cars, right?
Right. So you were deemed essential.
Used car dealers and pawnbrokers are two of the highest generators of sales tax revenue in the state of New York, Chris.
So
when you shut the lever down and all of a sudden the money stops flowing, the guys go to the chart and they go, where can we just flip a couple switches and get maybe 80% of it?
Walmart was still open for a bunch of time until they started roping off the TV section.
They got a pharmacy in Walmart.
You can't buy TVs. Go buy drugs. No TVs. If you take enough drugs, you won't want to watch TV anyway.
But isn't that just one beautiful coincidence there, that the highest producers of sales tax revenues were the quickest businesses to be deemed essential by Andrew Cuomo?
Restaurants, right? For takeout.
Yeah. Sales tax revenue.
Yeah. I don't know.
That's just my, conspiracy theorist
now that Andrew
opinion.
Cuomo's gone, we have nobody to pick on. It's, Donald Trump's gone, Andrew Cuomo's gone.
Yeah, I can find enough with
you
Kathy
pick on,
Hochul.
You could pick on her, but she's not as fun to pick on.
No, she's not as fun to pick on.
She's really serious. At least Andy had a little bit of a jovialness to him.
He did. He was old Italian, one of the guys, beepity boop. Andrew Cuomo was the kind of guy that knew what was coming out of his mouth was bullshit. And he knew as he was saying it that nobody was buying this. And if he could just take a few deep breaths, talk to a few reporters, everything was going to be okay.
There you go.
He believed what was coming out of his mouth was bullshit. He knew it, but he still did it. I think Kathy Hochul believes every word she says, and it scares the shit out of me.
Yeah.
But we're not going to go political on the Man of the Free today.
Yeah, well, there is a bill on the Senate floor right now to require secondhand dealers and pawn shops to take photo ID and essentially do the same thing that we do with our purchases to our sales. So
to your sales.
Correct. So anybody so this is not the first time that this is coming. We've knocked it down 2 or 3 times, but right now they want us to take a photograph and the ID and description and all the same things we take from somebody that sells us something to somebody that we sell a product to.
So if I come to you and I want to buy a G-Shock watch,
there you go,
for $35,
right? You
need my ID, you need my number,
take your picture,
my address, take my picture.
I don't do it now. It's not the law.
No. I understand that.
They're trying to make that the law.
Proposing.
They're trying to make that the law.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And it's not in session.
I'm sure that won't affect your revenue at all. I'm sure all these people will gladly, especially in the suburbs, they just throw their driver's license
3
at you.
years after you sold somebody a television, they figure out it's stolen. They show up at the person's house. It doesn't work anymore. Yeah, it's in the garage. Go ahead and get it.
Yeah,
Thanks for picking up my trash.
Oh, I'm so glad they're saving the world with these new laws.
But it's just it's a waste of tax dollars, I think. Not to hopscotch around, but back to the whole dangerous thing.
Oh, I want to know.
There was a guy came into my South Salina Street store, and the woman runs the store about 70% of the time there.
Okay.
And her name is Crystal. She's She's pretty tough. She grew up down there, and so this guy comes in. He's got his mask on, and he's asking.
I'm assuming you're not talking about a surgical mask for the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant that he had like a ski mask.
No,
on.
he had the guy that robbed the guy at knife point was also wearing a mask. So this happened within that where masks were required to go inside businesses at the time.
He's committing felonies, but at least he's observing this proper safety precautions.
So the second guy had a mask on also, and he says, "Can I see that game system?" I can't remember what it was, Xbox, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So she puts it on the counter. He says he wants to buy it. She rings it up. He grabs a mace out of his pocket, sprays her right in the face with mace. She's looking at him like, what are you doing? He grabs the game system off the counter and goes and runs out the door. She grabs her.
As the tills open?
Yeah. She grabs her case of water that was sitting on the counter behind her and wings it at the guy, chases him out the doors, chasing him down the street. I'm like, don't do that.
Yeah, that's not a good idea.
Give him let him run off at the game system. But yeah, it just happened twice in 1 week, or within a 2-week period of time. Once in Auburn, once here in Syracuse. And I started to notice a trend of people going into stores with masks on, which were required at the time.
Yeah.
So I put up signs, masks are required to be removed before you come into my store. On all my stores.
I love it.
Completely against the law, right? And the people would come in with their masks on. So, do I really have to remove my mask? I said, just take it down long enough to smile for the camera, then you can put it back on.
Right.
And you wouldn't believe the brazenness people have.
I would believe.
Yeah, it's crazy.
What are your thoughts on that, Chris?
Of
the
which?
whole pandemic thing.
Oh, man. Overreaction. That's what my thoughts are, that everything was a big overreaction, especially here in the state of New York, probably in most other blue states.
Yeah.
A lot of the states that didn't react as harshly didn't have nearly as many numbers of infections. I don't know. I think that there's probably a lot of manipulation of those numbers. Numbers can be manipulated easily. Yes. So, I try not to think about it anymore, because when you were talking earlier before the show that, how I'm not on social media. Mm-hmm. I got rid of it somewhere during that period of time, because every time I would turn it on, I would get angry about something that I just didn't see was right. When they did the whole hydroxychloroquine thing, and then everybody in every media platform poo-pooed it, when they had real scientific anecdotal evidence that this stuff caused you not to catch the virus, but yet everybody said it was witchcraft.
Yeah, or ivermectin, same thing with ivermectin.
But now they're pushing who knows what on everybody. Even still, there's commercials. Get boosted, get boosted, get boosted. You know how many people I know that can't move the arm that they get that they get their boosters in anymore?
Yeah.
That literally, I don't know if it's a needle injury. Maybe they're using a needle that's about this long when you go. I had a couple vaccines.
Did you?
This long.
Yeah.
Why? To get it in, what are you going to put it into the bone? Seriously,
it only
most people
reacts
don't have deltoids like yours. I mean, you need a 4-inch needle to get to your bone, but I'm just saying. Most people, they just need a little insulin needle. It's a water-based thing. You can just give it to me. I'll do it myself.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
See, that's great insight. See, now that's the part that I'm trying, the purpose of this show, there's a lot of facets to this diamond, to pun you as a punching.
That's how I got you on the phone, Luke Diamond.
Luke Diamond? I love it. We try to bring people relevant facts, right? We try to not err towards one side or the other. This is not about Republican. This is not about Democrat. This is about delineating facts. It's about having discourse that's respectful and civil. It's about saying, hey, the whole freedom of mind, money, and media. What is freedom of mind? It's taking barriers that maybe your parents made for you. Dad made 80 grand, so 80 grand is what you aspire to, and 250 grand that's something for other people, right? Our family doesn't do that. It's about getting rid of those barriers. It's about allowing yourself to question what you've been taught, not be skeptical, not be paranoid, but to question, to have healthy questions, not simply so you can naysay what you've been taught or to go against it, but so you can comprehend it, so you're not just blindly following the leader. That's freedom of mind. Freedom of money is the ability for one person to go out and create their own destiny. To not say, well, I can only make ever $85,000 a year because I work at Blockbuster, and I'm dating myself, huh? Because I work at Netflix, and the most I can ever make in this position is
Blockbuster.
You and me both, bro.
Come on.
A lot. You took over a Blockbuster at one of your locations.
Good way to kill, an hour.
It is. So and then the freedom of media is exactly this, right? So to have good, healthy, intuitive questions for the things that are being told to us, and maybe saying there's been a narrative established, why, what are the reasons, who stands to benefit, etc. We get in a conversation about a topic like the coronavirus pandemic. I've had questions over and over and over again. And, it's very validating. It's also very frustrating. As time goes forward, and somebody like me who way back when, they announced the whole pandemic thing. Ruben, we might need a new microphone stand. This is like a 80-year-old man's penis. It's doing what I'm asking it to do, but then it's fading over time. Maybe I'm being generous with 80. I hope it works that well when I'm 80. And towards the beginning of this thing, I watched the initial response of the governing bodies, the entities that were intelligent and were specialists on the topic, and they came to the forefront and they said, you need to deal with this for a little while. We need to establish a herd type immunity, and we need to, take the appropriate vitamins, exercise, fresh air, etc. It's nothing you'll be able to prevent. It's viral. It's going to make its way through the group. Just take the precautions that you can to try to avoid it, right? That was the official word, day one, right? Ground zero. Then
Fauci.
Yes. And it was.
Don't worry about the masks. Don't worry about. Don't hide.
He was asked one of the first questions.
Masks are not necessary.
Yeah, one of the first questions he was asked was about the masks, and it was masks are not necessary. Now I will take the
masks.
What's that?
Now it's 3 masks.
Yeah, exactly. I will take the knee-jerk reaction of somebody with Anthony Fauci level experience at face value, and I will revere it as good information. What I have an issue with is when time elapses and some pieces of the narrative, of some pieces of the story seem to be narrative-like. When it seems like we're moving towards a certain end, there's a choice group of people that stand to benefit, and then somebody like Anthony Fauci starts to say something that is the antithesis of what he originally said. When he was, first it was herd immunity, no masks. Then it was herd immunity is not really likely, masks are helpful. Then it was, if you don't have a mask on, you're killing old people by the hundreds each day. And the thought of any sort of natural immunity, you're an asshole. And then it was, and if you don't get vaccinated, you're a murderous, ravenous, radical Republican that doesn't care about people and you love Donald Trump.
You want to kill my grandmother.
Exactly. It's like, how in God's name did we get from here to here? What bothers me even more is now, years later, the information is coming to light. The studies are there. I believe it was the CDC or the World Health Organization. It was one of those two major bodies. And this was credit to Russell Brand on his, I think it's called the Stay Free podcast. There's a little synchronicity there with him and my tagline. And that is that this particular entity, and I won't quote because I don't remember which one it was, but they have just made the finding with a group of statisticians or researchers or whatever, that masks have little to no efficacy against the virus. Furthermore, they've established, and I believe this was the Politico, and I could be misquoting. I'm not. This is not meant to be, citable verbiage. This is just something that I witnessed. The fact was there though and relevant, and that is that the vaccine has little to no efficacy preventing the virus, and it is very little to no efficacy against lowering the burden of the symptoms. Then we take it a step further, and we're now discovering that the vaccines have caused high levels of clotting in younger individuals, especially athletic individuals, paired with now research shows that the heart attack death rate of children ages 12 to 30 is now up by 20%. I mean, I'm no rocket scientist, right? I'm a...
It's a good way to thin the herd.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It does.
So the funny part is, you start asking these questions, and you start concerning yourself with this information, and you become a conspiracy theorist, right? They've been very good at branding anybody who questions this one straight line A to Z narrative of what it is This is the first time in my life. I've always witnessed bullshit in the media. I've always witnessed politicians saying stupid shit that makes no sense, right? I've always witnessed the media having a tone and a narrative. This is the first time in my recollection, and I'd like to know your input on this because you've got a decade on me, okay? This is the first time in my life that I've experienced information being passed off as fact that is not verifiable. Furthermore, is not commonsensical. Not only that, but the other end of the spectrum is based on fact and common sense. I can't find any common sense in the narrative that they produced for this whole pandemic. I'm curious if you feel the same way.
No common sense at all. It's all there's an agenda that needs to be met, and it has nothing to do with anything that we and the public are ever told about. So no different than the war post 9/11 and weapons of mass destruction and all the lying that came from the other side. So this is not a politically leaning thought process on my part. I've witnessed tons of lying, and it's never been any different. It's just that it's more easily found out now because of social media. It's just it used to just be 3, 5, and 9. So whatever was on the 3, 5, and 9 channel, you believe.
That's what you got, right?
That was it. That was the news, and that was it. Now it's Luke has a podcast, and he's giving out fake news, and now everybody thinks that the end of the world's. What did you say, next Thursday?
Well, the following Thursday.
Okay.
I got a
2
flight.
weeks. Right. Well, it might be true. Everybody's got their own news channel now.
It is.
Point.
It is. You're absolutely right. That's why I make it a point on this show to say things like I just did. This is not a quote. This is not a fact. Go cite what I will do is I will bring things up in conversation that I've heard that I know the other appropriate entity has done the fact-based research on. For instance, Russell Brand's got 6.5 million followers. And when he states it, he cites the logo of the people he got it from. He gives you the context, the website, all this stuff. So that's, that's proper citing of the research.
That makes sense. Yeah. I'm all about research, but research, just like numbers, can be manipulated. Anything can be doctored.
Oh, I agree.
You can find an argument. The one thing I hate about social media is whatever you're feeling that day, whatever your thought is, whatever you're convicted about, you can find it, and you can find support for your argument. You can say, I think the world's flat, and you can go on social media, and by the time you're done, you will really believe that if you walk far enough, you're going to fall off the edge. So, this is a real thing, man. People, there's real flat earthers, and I'm not sorry to offend anybody out there that's a flat earther, but the earth is not flat. But anyway, it's people believe that, that there's an outlet for anything that they feed you. Anything that you happen to be upset about.
Generally, most of those people I have to believe that would be of the flat earth theory have never flown in a plane at 40,000 feet.
There you go.
It's kind of obvious. The horizon has a curvature to
there's
it.
Like a screen in the window when they're creating.
Like the Truman Show.
Creating a manipulation for you.
And so then the onlooker would then say, Chris, well, the same way that you're making fun of the flat earther for not believing that the earth is round, we can make fun of you guys for not believing that coronavirus is real, right? So it's this cyclical debate.
I don't think it's not real. I think the coronavirus has been around forever.
There was a directed response.
The COVID-19 specifically named virus is new, and then it's been mutated 12,000 times. But before that virus existed, most common cold viruses were coronaviruses.
It's on the back of a can of Lysol.
I
verified that, actually.
It's not a new virus. It's just, and no matter how many vaccines you make, even if you believed that the mRNA version of a vaccine was the best version,
right?
Which I think time has proven that it's not. Because if it was, you'd get the one shot, just like the measles, and you'd never get the measles.
With it, right?
You get the polio shot, you never get polio. They don't say, well, you're going to get a little bit of polio. Right. You might lose one leg.
This will make your polio not so bad.
But at least you won't lose both legs. If you wear 3 masks, you won't lose your arms, just your legs. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's the lunacy of it. It's
have
real.
2 more boosters, 3.
Yeah, right.
It's beyond. And
It's like a mad scientist. Like, but no, this is my greatest creation. But wait, no, you're sick. You're still sick. Hang on. Well, this is my greatest creation. It's cyclical, man. And it's at what point? We're at the point now where I believe that people whose lives are governed by common sense and logic are pulling their hair out strand by strand. They're finding other things to do with their time. They're migrating away from mainstream media. They are so spent mentally and emotionally with staring into a screen and knowing that the person speaking back at them, who is supposed to be speaking from a place of guidance and factual information, is just simply reading off a teleprompter that's bought and paid for. I mean, there was no, I couldn't get a bigger laugh. There's no further irony than watching a newscast where they're talking about, the what they did do. This was on a news show. It was on a CBS channel, a local morning show. I think it was like San Diego or something. They were talking about, and I will give them kudos, they were addressing the topic and the fact that there was an increase in heart attacks in children ages 12 to young adults age 29, right? So they addressed it. And I'm thinking to myself, holy shit, are we making headway? Is the mainstream media actually addressing the real issues here? And I watched, it was a roundtable discussion between three reporters. One was the one that had done the research. The other two were the morning show hosts, and our roaming reporter, what did you come up with, right? So she talks about, well, because of the fact that people were confined to their homes, they would tend to order a lot of DoorDash and Grubhub. And what this would do is it would lower the quality of their diet, it would lower their intake of fresh air, and it would lower their ability to gain exercise and have a diet. So we believe that the increase in lipids and sugar and lack of movement would give them a heart attack. It's like, okay, listen, there is a logical element to that. I'm with you. And then it was, well, children didn't go to school. So it's where it got
Don't
funny.
even go there. I don't even want to talk about
the
that.
kids couldn't go to school, so they couldn't build up their natural immunity to other viruses, which caused them to be a little less healthy, which caused them to then maybe have their heart suffer. And they were just dancing like, all I could think of was just, witches dancing around a cauldron. They were just dancing around the reality of the situation. So they came up with 3 or 4 more idiotic reasons that kids were now having heart attacks. Not once did they bring up the vaccine. Not once. No. Not once did they bring up the policies surrounding it, as far as covering your face, not breathing fresh air, staying at home, confining old folks to nursing homes. Never once did they bring up any of this stuff. And at the end of it, the lady, you could tell she was just at a loss for words. She's like, oh, well, appreciate your reporting and, good job on this. And I guess now we've just got to go to our doctors and get checked out. And then the camera cuts. And I'm thinking to myself, that's the best you could do. Now we got to go to our doctors and get checked out. It was unbelievable, Chris. I was thinking to myself, this is what we've come to right here. We can't even address the facts. Here was the irony. I was speaking about the irony. The segment ended. This episode of the morning show sponsored in part by Pfizer. I can't make that up.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Ruben. Did you hear what I said, Ruben?
I did.
The news episode sponsored in part by Pfizer. How the fuck are we allowing a drug company to sponsor a news segment about a virus that they are treating?
I don't know. It's a good question.
It is a good question. Yeah. How about the third most dangerous thing that happened at the pawn shop? We go political too long. It's going to go down a dark rabbit hole.
It's all right. The third most dangerous thing that happened at a pawn shop.
Or most remarkable thing.
Well,
it's not every day I get a pawn broken.
I had an experience today. A guy, one of my employees calls me. He's a longtime guy, and he says, "I got a guy in here. He's got some uncirculated dollars. The coin dollars, the ones that they basically spending money.
Okay.
Yeah. The seal's not broken on the pack, but there's no collectability to this whatsoever.
Okay.
So he sends me pictures of it, and I'm like." And hopefully that customer's not listening. Right
How many are there? 20? What's it worth? 20 bucks?
It's whatever it is.
Right.
I said, it's spending money. Tell him to go spend it. I go, wait. Just I go, tell him I have to make a profit. So offer him 80% of whatever whatever the face value is. He's probably not going to take it. 5 minutes later, I get a call back. He goes, yeah, he took the 80% of face value. I said, there's a bank right across the street. He could have gone over there and said he wanted to change it for larger bills.
The guy brought you 20 bucks that he could have spent for 20 bucks. And
I gave him $16 for it.
Oh, my Lord.
And then my wife says, well, if we She goes, if we put it in the case for sale, we can probably sell it for 120%.
That's the sad part.
And
Is
I'm
she's
like-
absolutely right.
I'm like, yeah, but why would I want a slow 40 when I can get a quick 20?
Right, 100%.
I'm just gonna. I don't even have to hold it. It's currency.
I know,
It's like somebody came in and here I got a $20 bill. Can I have $20?
I don't think it's like Chris. I think it is.
Well, you can have 16 ones.
Yeah.
Is that okay for your 20?
Yeah,
sure.
that
That's
makes
what
sense.
I charge 20% to give change.
My dear Lord.
But and the guy knew. I think it's happened once before.
Yeah.
And I wasn't participating in the last transaction.
Yeah.
I remember getting this bag of half dollars, but they were just, 1980 something half dollars, and they were not worth anything more than spending money.
Yeah.
And the guy, he took 40%. I'm like, 40% of the money for money?
I can't.
I don't understand it. But,
Well, I think it's perceived value, right? So somebody, what they did was they dug, and the thing is, I am remiss to think that these people acquired this by normal means, like of banking or changing money. I think they went to a shoebox that they found at their dead grandma's house. They found all these coins. They came to you and they wanted to sell it to you to try to get a few bucks off it. And in their impulsive greed, that just wanting to cash out, they didn't stop and think about the fact they could actually take the money and go spend it at the store, I think. I mean, I would like to believe
they
that.
could spend it on anything they wanted.
No, I understand. But what I'm saying is, his grandma dies. He grabs a shoebox. It's got 3 baseball cards, a stick of bubble gum, a marble, and then a roll of coins.
If he had $100 worth and I gave him 80, or let's say he had 120 and I gave him a $100 bill, he could have spent any of those coins at Dunkin' Donuts, but he couldn't spend the $100 bill that I gave him.
What do you mean he couldn't spend
They
the
won't
$100?
take it. Dunkin' Donuts doesn't take $100.
No, I understand that. But the point I'm making is that the guy didn't look at, like you looked at it as spending money. Yeah. He looked at it as collector coins. He didn't stop and think it was U.S. currency and he could actually go put it in a vending machine. I'm hoping, because otherwise then there's really no hope.
I don't know, man. I'm kind of scratching my head over going, I just do that all day long.
Yeah.
I'm trading currency. I'm a currency trader now.
Yeah.
Forget the bond business.
Just bring me your $20 bill. I'll give you 16 and we'll do this all day long.
I'm just going to put a big sign out. Big money for $20 bills. And then when they come in the door, I'm just going to give them $16 and go, I got to make a profit,
Yeah,
don't
what do you
I?
expect me to do? Just give you 20 for a 20? How am I going to keep the lights on? Why did you decide to go into this business anyways?
I have undiagnosed ADHD, and that pretty much sums it up. But so I worked for the phone company for like 17 years. I did a bunch of different jobs there. I've always had a job, since I was 14.
Yep.
But I just couldn't be satisfied with, the 9-to-5 thing, even though it was a great job. And I have nothing but good things to say about Verizon, honestly. Working for them. I don't like dealing with them as a consumer, but that's another story. At the time, I thought, I'm going to be a millionaire. I'm going to figure this out. And I bought the Carlton Sheets course. I don't know if you remember that. It was like a tape when you used to buy the courses, like Tony Robbins, but
Okay.
it was only for real estate. It's this old guy. He said, I'll teach you how to buy real estate with no money down. And
Yeah.
so it was all single family homes. So I just listened to the tapes over and over again, and I got the bug, and I started going to auctions, and I kept trying to buy properties and failing, and I used to get the adrenaline up at the auction, like I'm going to buy this one, and it never happened. And then one day I got a property. And
how did you acquire the property with no money?
Well, I didn't buy this property with no money. I actually made attempts to buy with the no money down thing. That's what got me interested in it.
Okay.
It's a lot harder than what it seems because
One would think so.
You're doing a lot of owner finance stuff and
Yeah.
zero down, and it's not very attractive to the seller unless there's an extreme situation. But
Right.
this was an auction property. It was a Bernie Brostek auction. And
Okay. And it's old.
the right investors didn't show up that day. I
Really?
showed up. I bought this house for like 30 cents on the dollar.
Nice.
It was a move-in ready house.
Really?
So I had just gotten married, my first wife at the time, and she knew I went to the auction. She didn't expect me to buy anything. So you had to put 5% down,
Right.
So I get home like, yeah, I bought a house. She's like, what? So that didn't go over very well. But then after she saw the property.
Once you saw the upside, I bet it went over real well, right?
Once she saw the property, she was pretty thrilled about it.
No kidding.
So I just started chasing auctions. I was chasing all the the tax foreclosure auctions. It was the city tax sale. They used to host it at Kraus Heinz Center there, downtown, and I think the Civic Center.
Okay.
And the county auctions. It's, and I would always just wait, figure out whatever property I wanted. A lot of properties I bought sight unseen. And I got, all of a sudden I would end up with houses that were, people had abandoned them, and they were just full of, like, somebody, it's like cobwebs all over something that somebody lived there. Right. All their stuff is in the house.
Yeah.
Like, how am I going to get rid of this stuff? So a buddy of mine had a secondhand store on the corner of Grant and Wadsworth, and I used to drive by and stop during my lunch break and stuff when I was working in my phone truck.
Right where you speak of.
And I'd see George, and I'd say, "Hey, what's up?" We went to grade school together, and we'd hang out. And I was always intrigued by all the stuff that he had in the store, and then I had all this stuff that I got in this one house that I bought. And so it just became, we formed a partnership. Long story short, and we started going to the flea market on Sunday and just selling all the stuff, and I just started splitting all the stuff with the store that I got for basically nothing, because I was buying these houses not knowing what was in them.
Right.
And that's kind of how it started, just starting to see value and just, did I lose it? No. Value in and stuff that I would just come by, and he got me interested in the gold market, and I don't know, the rest is kind of history. It just started from one little store, and he decided he didn't really want much to do with it after that, and I kept going with it. It was that. And
did he kind of bow out, or did you have to buy him out?
I had to buy him out.
Okay.
It wasn't an exorbitant. I can't remember what it was. It was fair for him.
It was a fair figure
for him at the time, and for me it was a lot. But I had a bunch of business partners over the years. You probably remember Frank, and that was a more expensive buyout by far.
Somebody that knew what he had a little better.
Yeah. I don't know. Just always had that spirit to try to do something different, because I had that. So eventually I ended up accumulating like 12 or 13 properties, and I had them all rented out.
Yeah.
And I was collecting the rents from those. I still had my Verizon job.
Okay.
I still had part ownership in the pawn shop. And then I was really heavy into working out at the time, so why not? I started training people.
Okay.
And I got my ACE certification, and then I went and started training. My main client base was like 50-year-old women that didn't like the way their ass looked in their jeans. And I did like 4 or 5 I loved doing that. I really did. It was just this time consuming, but it was nice to see the transformative aspect of it. Yeah. And then, feeling that gratification of, sculpting somebody.
100%.
So I had to pick a direction. So amidst all this accumulation of stuff, so I'm telling you everything in fast forward here.
Please.
I got divorced, kept doing all these things for a few years, like juggling, spinning plates.
Yeah.
I was making good money. I made a ton of money at the phone company. I just didn't. I was just in 100 different directions.
Can you touch on that briefly? You said earlier, I knew I didn't want to work a 9 to 5. That wasn't for me. When did that realization come? Because I know when you said that, some of our audience, because they're a very entrepreneurial audience, these are people that want to succeed, want to make their own money. What can they align with as far as how you felt?
There's nothing wrong with the 9 to 5. See, I needed cash flow at the time, so having that job was a godsend for me. It was a great. Again, I have nothing but good things to say. I still got a lot of good friends that still work there, and retirees that have retired from there. I'm officially a retiree.
Okay.
But I had to make a decision at one point, because after I met my now wife, that I've been married to for 17 years. I told her about all these things on our first date, all these businesses, everything that I got going on, and she's like, "Wow, you're all over the place. She says, you got to pick one thing."
Yeah.
And she kind of opened my eyes to it. So you have that 9 to 5 job that's got the 30-year plan with the benefits and the security blanket, and you feel nice and cozy.
Yeah.
And like, okay, this
always going to cash.
This is safe.
Yep.
I mean, I can still, even if I screw everything else up, I still have this.
Yep.
Pension, all that kinds of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you're running yourself ragged. Then I met her, and I fell head over heels for her, and
seems like an awesome woman.
Yeah, she really is. All the other stuff that I had outside of the phone company kind of became a distraction from her.
Okay.
So I was like, I still kept dabbling in the pawn business. So I would put up signs. The store was closed. I would only go by appointment. Put up signs all over on telephone poles. Cash for gold.
Yeah.
People would meet me. I buy cash. Basically, essentially, that's what you do. I buy gold, and she
have bought cash.
She just got intrigued with it, because she's really, like most women, she really liked jewelry.
Yep.
I let her pick through the whatever my
stash was,
whatever the booty was
Yep.
for the day. She'd pick through, and it's like she'd call me a pirate. She's I was like, get rid of all that old stuff from your ex, and here's some new stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it just became fun that way for us. You know what I'm saying? It was exciting. So I said, well, why don't I just try my hand at this? So I rented another location in North Syracuse that had already been an established pawn shop. It was across from Harbor Freight. You might remember.
That's where I first met you, Chris.
So, okay. So her and I were working there behind the counter, and I had one guy that would help me out, and he's still with me to this day, Dwayne. I don't know if you know Dwayne.
I don't know. If I saw him, I would probably know.
Anyway, really great guy. He's a good friend of mine. He, anyway, it was just a small operation, and then then Frank came in and took part ownership of Grant Boulevard.
Okay.
And then I had a building that I bought at auction on South Salina near Seneca Turnpike.
Okay.
That was a mixed use building, so I put a shop in there, and I had a guy named Jamie Clock who ran that. And he actually ran that as his own business, and I just leased him out the space for a while. But then, he went his own way, and I put Frank in there, and then there's a whole drama to go along with that.
There always is.
The city was fun to deal with back then. But
So you said something, Chris, and I want to kind of make the audience aware of. I know some of them picked up on this, and I want to help you kind of see where we go with this type of thing. So what I tell my audience as it pertains to success, becoming successful, trying to be your own boss, trying to, reach levels of wealth and success that are far beyond what is par for society. I tell them they have to do something that they enjoy doing, right? That in order to be viciously passionate about what you do each day, wake up each morning, fire out of bed, race to the vehicle, get out the door, go do what you do. The way to do that is to align yourself with something that you're passionate about. And I think without knowing it, you just really solidified that point by talking about all the different verticals of income that you had and the things that you were doing. And you said, her and I, meaning your wife, your now wife, we would do it, and then, it was like a pirate, and it was the booty. It was fun. And I enjoyed doing it. Yeah. And so we had to pick something, and that's what we did. Sure. And I think subconsciously you did exactly what you could read in a success book as far as what to do. Yeah. You picked the thing that was fun, the thing that you enjoyed, which, lucky enough for you, was lucrative. I see a lot of people go into areas of work that are less than desirable income levels, but they're happy with what they're doing, and that's where they find success. But the people that really click, and I find that are really doing well, are the ones that find something that is lucrative and they also enjoy doing, or they find a way to make something that is lucrative enjoyable. So would you say that out of all those things that you mentioned, the most enjoyable one for you to do was the secondhand stuff and the treasure hunting, so to speak?
And when you narrow it down to the vintage jewelry and the diamond aspect of it, that's the part that I really have a passion for. I really enjoy reading about it and learning about it. And I had a couple good mentors. Lucky for me that Mike O'Brien out of Oswego, New York, he used to have a diamond shop right there just outside the village. Okay. And he was well known for MDR, I think was the name of it, or it might have been, I can't remember. He's got 2 or 3 different business names, but he was well known for buying and selling estate jewelry. Okay. And he kind of took me under his wing, and I would liquidate a lot through him initially in the early phases, and so I got a good education, I think. Yeah, so something that you're interested in getting educated on and you want to learn more about, and you don't think you know everything about it. Even to this day, I'm still learning about it, and it's an ever-changing industry. Yep. They've just, now the market is flooded with lab-grown diamonds, so the majority of what's being sold, it's like a 3-to-1 ratio in the retail marketplace is lab grown because
3 lab grown to 1 natural stone.
well, everything's insider trading. So you talked about the virus. You talk about people having an agenda.
Ruben, could we kill this fan?
We talk about people having an agenda behind the purpose of them giving you the bullshit.
Yep.
The lab-grown diamond's the same thing.
Okay.
So what's happening is they're convincing the new generation that this is a more responsible stone for you to buy.
Oh, for Christ's sake!
Because that's
It's not a blood diamond.
Exactly, not a blood diamond. It's you don't have some 12-year-old slave person in the field or in a mine.
Right.
Killing themselves to mine this thing. Right. So they're saying, well, it's made in the laboratory.
So buy something we create and control.
But what they're not exactly. So what they're not telling you is just all the energy consumption that it takes and creates, and all the global impact that it has. That the same people that will tell you to buy this are the same people that tell you to buy an electric car, but
not tell you that you're charging your car off the coal-fired plant that's
Exactly.
dumping carbon into the
So
atmosphere.
it's market manipulation, and what I like to refer to as just plain old insider trading. It's whatever they tell you to buy today has an influence directly on their wallet. That doesn't. They'll tell you that bad consumer. Why did you do that? You're bad. You caused this problem.
You don't
You're
care
one
about the
You
environment.
caused this problem, but you know how you can fix it? You can buy this.
Yep.
That's exactly what they do. I don't care if it's an electric car, an electric stove. They want to illegalize propane gas for your barbecue. Come on. They're doing it. 2028, no more. You can't get them no more.
They passed legislation.
New York State for the little ones. Just they're starting with the little cans, the single use.
Canisters, yeah.
But back to the whole.
That's a valid point when somebody like Elon Musk says, you got to limit the amount of electric cars you buy. There's only so much grid support for charging your electric vehicles. Now, we can't go all. The guy is an electric car dealer. That'd be like saying, you can't. That'd be like saying, oh, you should go to the pawn shop to buy all your jewelry, and you go, no, you can't do that. We can't support it. It's not viable. It's not healthy. Whatever. You got to know if the guy that stands to profit the most from doing this particular behavior says, no. Don't do that. It should be a warning sign, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, he's got his interest in a lot of other things besides just electric cars, right?
True.
Smart guy. But back to your, finding my passion accidentally.
Yes.
I guess it was like that. Yeah, I guess. I would say that if I didn't go that route, I wanted to open, and I still do. Like, I have all these ideas in my head. I want to open this. I want to open that. I want to open this. I want to open that. And these are all things that I enjoy. And I think to myself, I could make a successful business out of that.
I'm smirking because we have a lot more in common.
But my problem is I'm too comfortable now. See, I focus on things that I'm passionate about today.
Yep.
My family, my children. My kids are high school age, 2 of them. I've got grown children. We have 6 combined children. So my eldest are 27 down to 13. So, and 3 boys, 3 girls. So right now I've got, at home with me, I've got
the Brady Bunch.
Well, no, I've got 1 boy, he's 13, and 1 girl's 16. My 20-year-old is home from Oneonta for break, but she's back off to Oneonta. Next year she'll be going to New York for FIT for the final year of her schooling. But those are the things that so that's what my wife and I focus on. We try to get up in the morning. I look at, because of the way my brain works, I got to look at my list of stuff pretty quick.
Okay.
Otherwise, it just gets lost. I'll be reactionary instead of proactive.
When you say your list of stuff, what do you refer
stuff I
to?
gotta do? Stuff I gotta get done. There's always.
It's funny, Chris, because you say that and you say it like it's second nature. In the morning, my list of stuff.
It's not. It's hard.
I have to. Well, that and most people. So the average Joe isn't waking up making a list. He doesn't have a legal pad next to his shitter. He doesn't have a super note, an e-ink tablet like I have. These are traits of successful people, and you're a very humble guy. Okay, I've noticed that about you. But there's some character traits that you have that align with highly successful people. And I'm not saying it to stroke your ego. I'm saying it because I do have an audience, right?
Sure.
This is a great conversation. We're having a lot of fun. But this is serving an audience of people who are here watching to try to get better.
Sure.
I got a message on one of my videos the other day. The guy says, "Hey, Luke, great episode. I want you to know that it's your words and watching this show that's given me essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but has given me the balls to open my own business.
There you go.
I just got my S Corp. I just opened my business bank account. I'm off to the races." places. Not too long ago, I had another guy tell me, I'm quitting my job, I'm going to start a business. Next thing I know, a couple weeks later, I'm watching the finished jobs that he's done. I draw a lot of inspiration from. That's why I do what I do.
Sure.
You have some very, some very obvious traits of highly successful individuals that I think I would venture to say that some of your success, some of your behaviors have kind of happened by circumstance and accident. Meaning, I find
A little bit of luck.
yes, that too, but it's, lucky people always tend to be the hardest workers in the room, right? I've noticed that. Or conversely, the harder the people work, the luckier they become, right? The hardest workers I know are the luckiest people. Things like waking up in the morning and putting your day, your priorities on a notepad, prioritizing things, making sure you know what has to get accomplished that day. That's a characteristic of a highly successful person. Putting your family first, focusing on family, children, moral ground, ethics, that's a trait of a highly successful person. Being in a 9-to-5 work environment, not feeling comfort, having financial security and knowing it's there, but also having a burning desire to step outside that environment and pursue something bigger and greater, that is a trait of a highly successful person. Having mentors that you revere highly. You've told me in 3 or 4 times in this conversation, I'm lucky to have this mentor. I'm lucky to know that guy. I learned a lot from these people, so on and so forth. You're literally checking off all the boxes of somebody who has pursued success based on the skeleton outline of any book you've ever read on how to be successful. And I wonder sometimes if you've ever sat down and realized that about yourself. Is that something?
It might be a lot of reading that caused through causation. It just kind of sunk in.
Okay.
Because I've always been a big Tony Robbins fan. I've always been a big, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. Anything that can just kind of like get you that extra little bit. Even if you only get one thing out of a book, read it. Eat it.
One more than you had.
Put it in there and see what happens. It's not like it's not gonna be the Holy Grail. You're not gonna get everything you need out of one thing. But it's like doing something right, being explained that something right to do. I've always heard that you need to hear it 7 different ways from 7 different people before you finally get it. Yep. And it's not always the case. Sometimes sometimes stuff comes natural to you.
Yep.
Certain things come natural to me. Certain things come natural to you. But there's other stuff that you got to work at. So I have to work at organization. I'm not very organized. That's my naturally speaking, I'm not organized at all. So I don't want to look at the disorganization. So I'll find places to put it, box it up. So the nightmare would be contained in this little 3x5 box of total disorganization. It's like a nuclear explosion went off when you open it. But it's not in my sight now, so it doesn't hurt.
It doesn't exist.
It doesn't hurt my brain at the moment. But like opening it is daunting. It's like scary.
Yep.
It's like, there's stuff in there that I'm putting off till later.
You walk by it, there's almost an energy to it.
But that's part of, the same thing will happen. I don't want to see shit all over my car. Like, my kids will leave the car and it looks like, I just left Yankee Stadium or something. But I want all the clutter out of my sight, but I don't have the acumen for organizing it all.
Okay.
When you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's the truth. It's just, it is. I'll have an anxiety attack if it's time for me to organize my garage, which I do like 3 times a year.
Yeah.
I have a prescription for Adderall because I'm, like I said, ADD. So
yeah.
I don't take it all the time. I've been more so trying to be religious about taking it lately just because I've been reading a book on it,
Okay.
on ADD, and just trying to associate.
How does the book talk about the relationship between the stimulant amphetamine, Adderall, and the disease? I've always wondered that. I've been diagnosed also as ADD.
When you have ADHD, it actually does the reverse for you. It'll calm you down instead of speeding you up. But there's other drugs you can take that are more on like an antidepressant type of spectrum versus a stimulant type.
Like an SSRI type of drug.
Yeah, there are 2 different ways you can go, and I'm thinking I'm going to maybe try the other version just to see. But I don't get super hyped up, you know what I mean? Like, I'll only take a half of the prescribed dose is a full pill, and that just, it doesn't, like, I don't think as clearly. So, like a half, and, I can accomplish whatever task I need, which I haven't, like, in all honesty, the prescription was filled a year ago. It's a month's supply, and it's still half full. So my wife's going to say, why don't you take it more frequently? And I'm like, I don't know what my aversion is to it. It's like I'm in denial.
Right.
It's like I can handle this. I can do this. But then, all of a sudden, all the noise will get so overwhelming to where it's, it becomes chaos.
Yep.
And plus, I have a hearing deficiency. My left ear, I've always had since I had spinal meningitis when I was like 4 months old. So it's like the swelling around the brain,
Yep.
and it killed the nerves. So currently there's no way to fix nerves. So you can amplify it, but it doesn't clarify it because certain octaves and sounds are
ranges.
They're gone.
Gotcha. Really?
So yeah, so I've never been able to talk on a phone with this ear.
No kidding.
But they say, I was reading about it, it says, hearing deficiency can exacerbate the symptoms of ADHD.
No kidding.
Because
Well,
it serves to piss you off because all of a sudden things that are going on in the room, rather than becoming precise sounds, will all of a sudden become annoying noises that are just like adding to your
You're teaching me a lot right now.
stress level.
You're teaching me a lot because I have a hearing deficiency as well. They believe it has to do with a lot of concussions I suffered playing football.
Okay.
And whereas if you and I are talking right now, you could talk this quietly and even try to be more quiet. And I would be able to pick up on everything you were saying. If Ruben turns on a fan and there's a buzzing noise, and then there's maybe background noise outside of the studio, and then you talk to me loud, very clear, very loud, I'm going to have a hard time because whatever happens inside my head, it's trying to pick bits and pieces of everything, to the point where if I'm in the shower and my wife is very loudly conveying to me her day's activities, I get lost halfway through because there's too much going on.
Right.
My mind has a hard time picking it apart.
Right.
I recall back when I was heavily addicted to drugs, there was certain people that would come over that would bring bottles full of, I remember they were orange pills, they were Adderalls, and they were the special ones because they were the ones you could crush and snort, not the ones that came in the, these guys know, man, there's no shame in my game.
I guess you could snort anything.
I found a way, that's for sure. But these guys know that, my life has gone to two very colorful ends of the spectrum. But during the dark period of my life, there was a friend, I guess, I use the term friend loosely. There was a guy that would come over and he had a prescription for Adderall. And I remember it was always very exciting at one point.
It wasn't me, by the way.
No. It was always very exciting at one point during the month because he would come over to have a bottle full. And we would sit and we would eat these pills or snort these pills and we'd play video games. And I remember about, halfway through, a couple pills in, he'd be like, all right, dude, let's go to the club. And I'm like, what are you talking about, man? I'm ready to go to bed. He's like, what? Bro, we've been snorting Adderall all night. You should be wired for sound, ready to drink, party, fight, and fuck. Let's go. And I'm like, let's play a little Call of Duty, man. Let's light some incense, and let's just freaking hit the sack and go to work tomorrow, dude. What's the big deal? And he couldn't fathom how I was so calm. And I just remember that particular drug gave me a overwhelming sense of peace and calm, just a nice warm buzz down the back, and I could focus on whatever. I would clean the house. I never was overwhelmed with energy. And then I would go to bed. I'd put some music on. There'd be very acute sense of the sounds and the music. Of course, I was using far excess of whatever the recommended dose was. I was using it, very much the wrong way. Right. But I would fall right asleep. I would have an elevated heart rate, but I would fall right asleep. And I later found out that was a very significant indicator of having ADHD because most people, if they were to take 2 or 3 30 or 40 milligram Adderalls, they would have been out the door like a stretched rubber band and partying all night. And I couldn't do it. I'd fall asleep.
Bouncing off the walls, yeah.
I'm hesitant. I've had my doctors, wanted to explore the possibility of using that. And I don't know, man, when you're a drug addict that's used something recreationally in the past, the thought of undergoing treatment with it's just not something I'm willing to do.
That's smart.
But the flip side of the coin, somebody like yourself, it's nice to hear that it's actually, that it's beneficial, right? Because you see so much illicit use of certain drugs. But when you do, I'm sure there's guys out and girls out there in the audience that may have ADD or be dealing with it. So on that point, since we've gone there, what is the benefit? You said it allows you to focus more?
Yeah, it just makes it so it's not so noisy. It just kind of calms things down.
Do you kind of feel like there's chaos at all times, meaning from your eyes, your ears, like there's a lot of stimulus?
Yeah, sometimes it just depends. It's not always like that, but there's it's like when I talk about shoving everything in a box. You know,
Yeah.
I want to get that visual chaos away from me, and I didn't realize it because it didn't used to bother me, or at least I didn't realize that it did
Okay.
for most of my life, and then all of a sudden, in the past few years, I've become like, you know, I don't. It's not necessarily that everything has to be in order. It's just that it needs to look like it's in order.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like I go over somebody's house, I got a neighbor across the street, I go over their house, and it's like, it looks like, I mean, it's so perfect, pristine, clean. Everything is like, there's not a dust particle in the corner. And I'm like, this is perfect. I mean, I want my house to be this clean. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just so ridiculously like pristine.
Perfect. Yeah.
And, you know, so, but I strive for that because I think it's a good thing. Cleanliness is next to godliness. I hate filth, but I'll never achieve that because there's always I'm like, I'll start things and then I'll get 80%, 90% done, and then I'll go on to something else.
The true marker of ADD.
Yeah, I won't ever
Unfinished projects.
100%. Like, I'll literally, like, on flip houses before, I've had like 85% of it done, and then I'll hire somebody for the final 15%.
Because you just can't get through it
Because I'm spent, like
mentally.
Like, I don't want to look at it anymore.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I'm done. Okay, the majority of it's done. The cabinets are in, the floors look good. But when it comes to the minutia, you know, like the little quarter round pieces, and that'll drive you, that'll take me forever because I'll be like, you know, trying to be a perfectionist about it.
Minutia.
Yeah,
I love that word.
Right.
I just learned that word like within the past 12 months, to be honest with
you.
you. Yep.
I brought it up again for you.
I appreciate it.
PTSD with minutia.
One thing I've noticed, Chris, throughout the course of this show is that you've got a great vocabulary. Do you read a lot?
Not as much as I should, but
But
yeah.
you do
know,
read. You make it a point to read.
Yeah.
Okay.
You need to. You need to feed the. Otherwise, you know, it just gets rusty.
I couldn't agree with you more.
It won't work. It's like your body. You know, if you don't move,
100%.
you're turning into a pile of shit.
You ain't kidding? Well put. I try to do this for these guys. You know, when I see something that's noteworthy, I try to bring it to their attention.
Thank you. Yeah.
Of course. I mean, honestly, Chris, I brought you in here as a guy who I knew was a morally sound individual, had a good moral compass, good business ethics, good business acumen, was a good conversationalist, and just a sound individual and a successful businessman to bring in and to try to provide value to my audience. And as I sit here
You're too kind.
That's a fact, man. I don't bullshit. You know that. You know that well enough, okay? But I also, as we're discussing things,
I only came on here just to get showered with compliments. That was it. That was my only motivation.
Hey, mission accomplished. I want these guys, you know, there's a lot of things that have been noteworthy to me as we've talked, and you know, some of the business things, but more so, you know, I try to when something comes up that's an item of value and I think the audience can benefit, I kind of stop and I address it. Reading is so fucking important, right? I remember the first time I read a book front to back, and I mean ever, because in school I was blessed with the ability to skim through, to read certain parts and bullshit my way through the test, right? Actually physically read a book front to back was Jeremy Thatcher Dragon Hatcher in like second or third grade. And I remember it like it was yesterday because it was the only, I got such a feeling of accomplishment
Just
when I read
fiction.
that book.
Pure fiction. Yeah.
What's that? Oh yeah, it wasn't aligning with anything in real world, no. And since then, I'd made many attempts to read books, but you know, of course, now reflecting, I believe it was whatever that condition, if I have the ADD or ADHD, just I get 85% of the way through the book, kind of like you said about your project. I'd get most of the way through. You know, there's 30% to go, 25%, 10%, and it's like, okay, I kind of got an idea. Let me go on to the next one, right?
Yeah, if it's not compelling to you, you know, you're just on the wrong subject matter.
Right.
If you found something that you really loved, and it would be more of a leisure enjoyment thing for you.
So that's where I'm going with this.
Than a work.
When I was in prison, you're absolutely right. When I was in prison, people would bring books, you know, the library cart, and I'm looking, and I started to get books that were about, like there was a book called The Art of Seduction, I believe it was called, and it was about, you know, the human psyche and different types of personality traits and how they can be manipulated. I read that thing front to back. And then once I actually accomplished reading a book front to back, I thought, okay, well, I don't have this handicap. I just have to find something that interests me.
Right.
So long story short, I ended up, once I got out of jail, looking into books that were on topics that were things that I felt if I were able to absorb all the information on this topic, it would get me closer to my goals, right? So I found a couple people, you know, your Grant Cardone's. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's an influencer. He's kind of like a Tony Robbins, but he's not just in the
Motivational.
the discipline of motivation.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
he also does real estate and sales training and stuff. But excuse me, him. There's a book by Chris Voss called "Never Split the Difference." It's a negotiating book. There's Dr. Jordan Peterson. He's got I think 13 Rules for Life or 12 Rules for Life. Read through that, and these were all things. I read these books and I thought to myself, man, these people there's people out there like me. That there's people out there that feel the same way I feel, and their thinking aligns with mine. And don't get me wrong. I wasn't drinking out of the dish. There were things I didn't agree with, and there were things I couldn't align with. But by and large, realizing that these successful people that had strict moral discipline, and that was really the changing point in my life. It was when my moral compass changed. You're not going to remember this, but in 2000, I couldn't even.
This is at North Syracuse?
Yeah. This was in probably 2005. Okay.
Okay, hit me.
I was heavily addicted to opiates. I'd had this shoulder surgery, and they had got me hooked on hydrocodone. When I say they'd got me hooked, they did not cause me to be addicted to drugs. They overprescribed me. And when I say overprescribed, I mean I had comparatively more drugs at my disposal than cancer patients that I knew that were near death, right? But the big breath for the long-winded statement here.
Charmed the doctors.
Well, it was two things. The doctors liked me, but they also fucked up the surgery.
Sure.
They promised me that I was going to be able to throw a football 95% as far as I was able to throw it before I was injured. We were talking 60%, right? So I was furious. I got the surgery so I could try my hand at college football again. I was going to walk on. I had all these visions of grandeur, none of which were realistic. But when a doctor tells a patient, this is what you're going to have, and you undergo a really invasive, life-changing surgery because of it, you would like to expect that information is relatively factual. And when you're 60% of what they told you was going to be reality, well, then you become very depressed, you become very upset. And they learned very quickly that I could be bought away from a lawsuit with drugs, right? Well, how about we just crank up, your dose? How about we take you from hydrocodone to Percocet? How about we take you from Percocet to oxycodone, et cetera? So it was a very dark road that I went down and got on some very, very heavy narcotics. It was during that time that I went through the whole sell some pills to get some play money and eat some pills, then, eat some pills, sell some pills, eat more than I sell, then have none left to sell, then eat all, buy some, then eat all, buy more, then try to find, it was just a vicious cycle that they all go through. Luckily, I never went to injecting heroin, which is where most pill addicts go to because it's much more cost effective, because I certainly would have died knowing how I behave and the excess that I require in that portion of my life, I would have been dead. During this time, I ran out of money, and I owned a house on Henry Clay Boulevard with a garage full of toys and a house full of trinkets that were expensive electronics and things like that. And I was broke one day. I was dope sick. Buddy of mine comes over, brings me a couple pills. I give him my last $20, and I'm like, well, fuck, I don't know what I'm going to do from this point moving forward. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, because I'm going to be dope sick in about 6 hours when these pills wear off. I got to work tomorrow, and I got no more money. And he's like, well, when do you get paid? I said, Friday. And it was like Tuesday. He's like, well, dude, you got your toolbox, your air compressor, you got like your baseball cards. I'm like, well, yeah, I got all that shit. But if I put it on, at the time it was the swap sheet. It wasn't Craigslist, You remember the swap sheet?
Yeah, I do. I like the swap sheet. I miss the swap sheet about as much as I miss Blockbuster.
Yep. Yeah,
simple.
Old guys like us miss those kind of things, Chris.
How about the Car Trader, the book?
The Auto Trader?
Auto Trader was just a black and white
You took
pictures.
a pen and you circled the ones you liked and go back to and actually call and talk to people instead of,
it was the
texting.
Best.
It was real life stuff. So he goes, you can go to a pawn shop. You can bring them this item. They'll give you money for it, a percentage of its value. And as long as you come back when you get paid on Friday, you can buy it back. Now, my father had dropped off at my house at that time probably $5,000, $6,000 worth of tools that he had moved into a smaller place. He was kind of bequeathing me these things that is family heirlooms and usable trinkets and whatnot. And I said, So I threw, I'm not sure what it was, probably a couple wrench sets that were high dollar items in a DeWalt drill in the back of my truck, and I drove over to where he told me to go, and it was the Pawn King in North Syracuse, in the Cicero area, the show or the store where your buddy Dwayne was, I think. And I go in there, and I remember there was a pack and play in the middle of the floor, and there was a little baby in the pack and play, and there was a woman behind the counter, and there was you, the Pawn King. And I walked in, I said, holy shit, the guy from the commercials is here, no kidding. And I'm sure I had a nice, well-prepared line of bullshit for you about how these were extra special and worth all sorts of money. And you hit me with a figure that was, it was very difficult to fathom how I was, gonna sell this item for that much money. But I was in and I soon learned how one could be profitable in pawn brokerage and secondhand sales. And when the entity that's looking to sell you the item has no other fucking choice, then they have to accept the offer. So I went back and forth with you. I walked in there with stuff that I knew was worth $500 retail. Said, okay, it's not new anymore. It's worth $400. And when I got offered $175, went, Jesus fucking Christ, this will get me through a day. I had a $200 a day habit. So we probably settled on a couple $100. I sold you this stuff. And I remember you were a very kind soul. I remember that. I remember it was obvious to me that you could sense what was going on. You knew you had an addict or somebody that was, involved in some sort of substance, and they were in a bad way. And I was very young at the time. I was probably 22, maybe 21. And your wife was very kind. And it was just I enjoyed being in there. I did. I felt almost like I had friends there, that these people, they don't judge me. They know what's going on. They're just, and as I was leaving, you're like, hey, you like movies? I'm like, yeah. You're like, yeah, go pick out a couple movies, man. And you didn't charge me for them. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. So to be sitting here with you in my podcast studio, it comes full circle. Now, Chris, It didn't end there. I came back days, weeks. I emptied out that garage. You got my air compressor, my lawnmower, all my saws, my tools, my grandfather's tools. I mean, everything with the exception of some stuff I just couldn't part with because I felt like I would be struck dead by God by a lightning bolt there in the driveway.
Sure.
Camcorder, you name it. Right down to I brought you baseball cards, and you knew very little about the baseball cards. You called the guy, and he said they're probably worth this, and he gave you a number, and you threw me $50 on top of that. And because I was like, man, I've sold you like half my house. And you're like, yeah, I know. You should probably get the problem fixed that you're dealing with. And I was like, yeah, probably not. So long story short, it's really nice to have you here for not just the reasons that we've already discussed and bringing value to the audience, because I want them to understand, this is a humbling thing for somebody to say, right? This is something that I would have probably not admitted to Chris, somewhere in the interim when I was still getting in trouble and trying to find success and all these things. But, as a guy that is very confident that my trajectory is upward from here on out and has no plans nor no desire to go back to the place I once was, to be sitting here, to see you become an accomplished businessman, a guy that I enjoyed doing business with, even though it was at one of the lowest points of my life, to see that guy become successful. And I always rooted for you, as I would see on TV and hear you in the radio. There was all the Bridge Street appearances and all the times I would see in media. And I said, you know what, that guy deserves to be successful because he deals with people who are in a very bad way, but he doesn't treat them like shit, at least not in my experience. You were respectful. You had respect for your customers. Obviously, you knew what line of work you were in, and there were times I'm sure it frustrated you and you acted accordingly. But overall, my impression of you was a nice guy, morally sound individual. So I rooted for you. I was happy to see you become successful. As you continued to open stores, it was always something I thought was cool. So to have it come full circle, and today be with you in this studio as two guys who are successful business owners. I've got 3 opening my 4th car dealership. You've got how many Pawn Kings?
There's 8. We had 14 at one point.
Okay.
Just a lot to manage. And
did you scale back? Was it scaling back on purpose, or was it just too much to handle?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
Didn't have the software program that we have now. So now it's just a matter of I see locations and I'm going, I want to open over there. But I don't pull the trigger because the staffing has become a nightmare. And I don't mean to sound downtrodden over it. It's just
facts are facts.
Right now, just to keep my existing footprint operating at full capacity, I find myself working behind the counter more now than I did back when you and I first met.
No kidding.
Back to that capacity where I'm there, a couple times a week, open to close. Yeah, and I haven't done that. It's tough because they say, you'll talk to a successful business owner. Like my tenant is a successful business owner. He owns a physical therapy location. I think he's got 7 or 8 locations. And he always says, you can't work on the business and work in the business at the same time.
Correct.
So, in knowing that, it'll kind of frustrate me.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm not too proud to work behind the counter or clean the toilets at the store or whatever has to be done. You know, I'll just do it. I'm thankful that I have a store to go work at. You know what I mean?
100%. I know exactly what you mean, Chris.
It gives you a different perspective, and it's nice for me because, you know, there's people that haven't seen me in a while that come in and say, holy shit, I can't believe you're here.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, yep, here I am. You know, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, but
they say the mark of a good boss is somebody who will never expect you to perform a duty that they wouldn't perform themselves.
It's, you know, there's a couple jobs.
Another box you're checking off, Chris.
A couple jobs I don't like to do.
No.
I have had people do stuff that I definitely don't enjoy. Not that I wouldn't do it, but the fact that I have somebody there that can do it, you know.
Well, now I'm curious.
Oh, you know, sometimes you end up with appliances.
Yeah.
You ever get an old refrigerator and open it up? It hasn't been open for
not
a
too
year.
Pleasant, Chris.
A fridge that hasn't been open for a year.
No, thank you.
That's not fun. That's not fun. But I've got one great kid who actually toughed it out.
Yeah. Is this in a property that you bought an old fridge, or are you talking about somebody pawned a fridge?
Yeah, no, I won't buy the fridge like that. But like
so.
if it's like I was talking about before, where you end up with a property,
yeah.
You know, I always say, every time I pick up another property, I always say, I'm not doing this again. This is the last time. I'm never doing this again. You know what I'm saying? Dealing with the whole process, and then like lo and behold, you end up with another one.
Yeah,
It's like just another side project that I don't want to deal with.
Yep.
I want to focus, you know, and not necessarily on the pawn shop. You know, I always say, I'm going to be a billionaire. I have no idea how, but I always say that I'm going to be.
Yep.
I never knew, you know what I'm saying? So it's like there's a convincing part of myself that is already there.
Yep.
Like I'm a billionaire. I just don't know. I just haven't achieved the paycheck yet.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
But you know you're going to get there.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure.
You and me both. You know, that's pretty incredible, because that's another thing that's a common theme. Two things you just spoke on there, and I'm going to just kind of do the pause for the audience. Somebody who is willing to go to their business, work side by side with their employees, and do the same jobs that they request of their employee to do, as something as shitty as, no pun intended, cleaning the toilets, okay? That is the marker of a good businessman, because the most successful people that I've ever met are, not only do they have the capability, not only will they, but they prefer at certain intervals to do that, to just renew everybody's understanding that I'm no better than you. I'm in here doing this. I revere this position and what you do just as highly as anything else, and make their presence known. The other thing was the projection and the ability to have foresight to one's future wealth. Every, and I mean every, highly successful individual that I've ever come across, when I asked Rita West. I don't know if you know Rita West. She's a local woman. She owns a gym. She's in Vegas now.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's super muscular.
Incredible woman.
I met her once. She gave me a tour of her gym. My son and I went in there.
Yeah. She's an awesome human being. I mean, she really is. And when I asked her, you know, when it come time to make a decision to use performance-enhancing drugs, when it came time to pursue the world record, when it came time to do these things that are on your resume as why you are who you are, did you ever have doubts? Did you ever say, you know what, this really isn't for me, or maybe I shouldn't do it? And then before I can even finish my sentence, no. You know, Rita's got a deeper voice than most women. Still very feminine, but it's very distinct. And you know when you're talking to Rita West. Furthermore, you know you're talking to Rita West because of the conviction with which she speaks. And, you know, there's several others. Rob Senecal, Bridgeland Auto Brokers, Candy Cars, the guy with the funny suits.
Yeah.
You know, he's just like, you know,
awesome.
During, you know, much like me, during the period of drug abuse, which he went through as well, and he's very humble and very forthcoming with it, and I appreciate that. And we have audience that gained a lot from that. During the time of self-doubt by way of chemical dependency, you know, there's never any sure footing about anything. But once the body becomes able and sober, it's, well, yeah, we're going up from here. Kind of like I just said to you, I'm positively convinced that my trajectory is up from here, and I'm not going back to that dark place. I'm sure of it. There is no question, to the point I would submit to a polygraph test, that I'm just absolutely sure that my wealth will be with a B, not an M. It's going to happen. I will have my own plane. I will have buildings that I own. I will have a major influence on this world. And so I say, well, how are you going to get there? I say, well, I have an idea, okay? But these pieces come together as you implement and as you grow. And for somebody to say, that is a billionaire, to ask them and say, okay, look back on the past 20 years of your life. Was every step planned out? Was every marker in place? Did you hit every? Oh, God, oh, no. Man, I've changed the game so many times. I've adapted, I've overcome. And that is another marker of a true entrepreneur and a successful individual, is the ability to adapt, the ability to say, okay, I want to scale. I prefer the marble composition notebook, but I need software because the world operates digitally now. I need to go that route. For somebody like me to say, man, I get so annoyed when I walk through the mall and I can't get past a kid whose face is buried in their phone. And, I run into them because they have no idea where they are, what they're doing, what direction they're traveling. But if I want to compete, I got to be on social media. I have to have a presence. I have to buy into the whole Instagram, Facebook, TikTok methodology.
I agree.
So
I just don't do it personally.
Yeah.
I just pay somebody to do it.
100%. Yeah. But regarding the success aspect of it, the fact that you're that confident you're going to be a billionaire is just another box that you're checking. You're going to walk out, your head's not going to fit through the door. You realize that.
It doesn't now. It's already too big. It was big to begin with.
It's another thing we have in common.
I can't even buy a cowboy hat.
You can't buy a hat,
What
can
the
you?
freaking, was it Granger where they sell cowboy hats?
I don't know.
No, Tractor Supply sells
Supply.
cowboy. We were going to a country concert, and I tried every hat in the place on.
Wouldn't do it, right?
My head's too big.
I used to wear a fitted backwards hat. It was like my trademark. I can't even fit in one now. I literally have to wear the snapbacks and put it on the last snap. That look like Elmer Fudd. Question for you, Chris, as we get wrapped up here, okay? If you could, we've got an audience here that just wants to get better, okay? Whether it's in their relationships, whether it's in their life, whether it's in their business and their wealth, they're just trying to get better. Most people will put wealth and the freedom of money before the others, but they're all important. If you could speak directly to them and give them advice on maybe from your personal experience, maybe a moment that you had a revelation or a moment of clarity. I don't mean to make it so biblical, but a moment of clarity where you realized, for instance, myself, okay, one of the moments of clarity for me was when I realized that I am not my father, I'm not my mother, that I'm Luke Lunkenheimer, and whatever I choose to pursue and whatever level I try to reach, as long as I put in the appropriate work, the steps, and the investment, I'm just as capable of getting there as anybody else. It has nothing to do with my DNA, where I came from, or who my parents were. So I'm just going to continue to try to climb and reach my potential with a killer's instinct, no matter what. I'm just going to go. And until I feel that I'm at the top and I can't get any further, I'm not going to stop. That was a revelation that I had. And when I had that revelation, I went from one store to two to four, car dealer to car dealer, and, YouTube host, car dealer to car dealer, YouTube host, and digital content creator, app builder, and just the verticals kept continuing to grow because I just said, if I want to do this thing at a high level, I have to have multiple streams. Sure. And I kind of had a breakout moment in my life, okay? And this is over the past probably 3 years. Do you recall a moment where where your life went on a significantly more vertical trajectory because you came to some sort of conclusion?
I don't know if it's necessarily I came to a conclusion per se, but I was still kind of shaky in the business. We had just gotten started, and my wife and she was very much integral, still is, behind the scenes. We just got married, and we were still not there financially. The business was on Bridge Street. I think I had just made my first appearance on Bridge Street like a couple of days before. And we got married like the next day or somewhere in that vicinity. I don't know the exact proximity, but at the night of our wedding, I did like most young people do, except I wasn't that young at this point. This is my second marriage. Okay. I'm opening up all the envelopes to see how I ended up where the money ended up to pay for the wedding. Yeah. You see, which luckily I cleared it. We had the honeymoon booked already, which I had already paid for with money from Verizon at the time, and we jumped on an airplane. We went to the next morning or the next evening rather, we landed in St. Martin. She had never been there. I had been a couple of times. So it was New Year's Eve night, and it was pitch black out. So she didn't know anything about it. The next morning we woke up. She woke up before me. She was like a 12-year-old kid comes running, look outside, look outside, look outside. So it was this, I don't know if it was a moment of clarity, but it was just like that childlike wonder that I saw in her that made me excited about where my career was going. Not necessarily where my career was going, but where my life was going, and it was with her. And I remember we didn't have cell phones that would work there. We had to use calling cards. You had to prepay. You had to buy the card and use them at the pay phones.
Yep.
And we had left X amount of cash in order to run the stores. Mm-hmm. Well, that Bridge Street appearance had such a impact. Really, seriously.
I can see where this is going.
I call up, and Dwayne says, I'm out of money. I said, what do you mean you're out of money? I left you like, I don't know, it was like a lot, $5,000 or something at the time, which we if we spent $3,000 in a week, it was a lot. Yeah. He spent $5,000 in a day. I had to figure out, I had to coordinate, over the phone with a bunch of different people. We end up having like a just huge record week. And it was just to me, it was just the universe just saying, hey, you did the right thing. Everything you're doing you're on the right track.
It's all going to work out.
And yeah, that was a great time. It was like, here we are enjoying ourselves. We're so far away. I'm like, oh, we really should be back there. But no, but in all reality, no, we should be right where we're at. Everything's playing out the way it's supposed to play out to our benefit.
100%.
And everybody's benefit in our family and stuff. And that's really where the business really started taking off. And, I would say to anybody that's listening that doesn't know, or doesn't have the confidence to do it, just do it, because whatever it is, the business that you're thinking about doing, it's better, more is lost from inaction than wrong action. Always, not sometimes, but always. So even if you lose everything from making the wrong decision, at least you've learned something from that decision. If you do nothing, you gain nothing. If you lose all your money, you can always make more money. I've had to lose everything and make more and make it all back multiple times in my life. So this right now, what Luke is saying about nonstop trajectory and seeing yourself at the top and not stopping, you always want to have that attitude. But you got to, be realistic and say, you're going to have bumps in the road. There's always going to be bumps in the road. You can't operate out of fear. Just don't be afraid to get out, trip over your shoelaces. Just go out and do it, go out and do it. It's better to, figure it out as you go along than to just you're never going to get everything 100% perfect before you decide to pull the trigger.
Yep.
Just pull the trigger.
They say it's better to love and have loved and lost than to never love at all. And I think it kind of goes with what you're saying. You can die somebody who wonders what they could have done, right?
There you go.
And as far as I'm concerned, that's the biggest tragedy in the world is wasted talent, okay, or wasted opportunity. And too many people, and this is the purpose of this show. We have several purposes. This is one of the big three. And people go to the grave. They get diagnosed with early health conditions, cancers, and viral infections, and their time is limited on this earth. As it is, let's say we're all very blessed and we live to be 100. Okay, that's a century. There's companies that outlive that. You know what I mean? Ford Motor Company is a century and 20 years old or something like that. There's companies that have outlived the longest lifespan of a human being. What you create in this lifetime is, there's no guaranteed marker of what's going to happen after you die, right? Now there's faith, there's religion, and people have their own perspective on that. Some people you'll talk to and they say, I absolutely know what's going to happen. I know where I'm going. I know. And to them, I have envy, because to know that, I think, is a very warm, comforting thing. There's other people that, like myself, that have a very difficult time grasping something unless I've seen it and touched it and talked to somebody who's experienced it. So for the time being, we'll call it the unknown. And once that time comes, the time for you to be in control of what is the action is gone. You get to, if the ride is there, to the afterlife, you get to go on it. And God bless you, no pun intended. You get to enjoy that experience, and I hope it is. But while we're in this period, this finite period of knowing what we can expect, knowing what we can do, knowing what canvas there is to paint on, it's such a tragedy when people sit back and they don't paint on it, because people don't have any idea what a beautiful artist they could be until they put the brush to the canvas. Now, I'm going crazy with analogies and metaphors here.
Amen to that. No, seriously, you're absolutely right.
If you don't just take action, I think about myself. My wife came to me. She offered me money from an injury, a settlement from an injury, the better part of $100,000. And I had already proven with a partner who had gotten the better of me that I could run a car dealership, I could buy cars, I could make a lot of money. And I didn't have the confidence in myself at that time to say, I loved her. She's my wife now. She's the most amazing woman in the world, and I'm very blessed to have her. Shout out, Nikki. I love you, honey. But I at that time, was not confident enough to say, okay, I'm going to risk this woman's money to go do this thing because I'm that sure I can do it. In hindsight, do I wish I would have? It would have been a more profitable first 4 years because I wouldn't have been splitting it with my investing partner. In hindsight, would I have done it differently? I don't know. The 4 years went tremendous. Things happen for a reason, right? But the bottom line is this. If my investor never came to that partner never came to me and offered me that investment, I never would have done those things. Maybe further down the road, whatever. The bottom line is it happened the way it did because it took somebody, and I say this in pure honesty to my audience, and I have before, I would not have gotten started as soon as I did had somebody that I revered highly, who was very successful, not come to me and say, hey, you're capable of this. I'm going to make the investment. We're just going to do it, right? Because he saw monetization ability in me, and he also was a nice guy, right? So I learned very quickly that I had a skill set that was monetizable, and not only monetizable, but was slated for very high levels of success if I chose to take action. So I did, that happened, and here we are, and I'm taking this audience on a ride with me that includes, I'm flying to Manhattan tomorrow. I'm working on producing an application, a digital app for the phone that I think is going to change the music industry, and it's going to be very big. And there's non-disclosure stuff, so we can't get into it. But I'm very excited about it. But 3 years ago, 5 years ago, that would have never been on the palette. It never would have even crossed my mind. Nor would have I had the resources to fund it myself. I would have had to go to private equity. Would have had to go to investors and given up, ownership stake in a great idea that could monetize heavily. Or I may not have even done it at all. But the bottom line is, if you don't pull the fucking trigger, right, you're never going to know. You're never going to know. And what Chris is saying, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is what you stand to lose is so minute in comparison to what you stand to gain. I keep this young lady here
I've been looking at
to the right of me.
Yeah.
Themis. She's the goddess of justice and good reason. She wears a blindfold because justice is blind. She carries the sword of justice. She stands on the book of law on the head of the serpent. And it's just a big representation of, things. I look at it, everybody has their own interpretation of it, but I look at it as the right thing doesn't require you to see it. It doesn't require you to speak of it. It's just the right thing. The old lady falls down, you walk over to her, you get your feet wet in the puddle, you help her back up because it's just the right thing to do. It doesn't require you to be told the answer, to see the answer, to have read the answer, to have any guidance on this fact whatsoever. You just do the right thing because that moral compass inside you knows that's the right thing to do. But she also carries a scale, right? And it's just strictly a single balance scale, one to the other, right? Proportionate. And in my life, I try to keep balance, work, family, love, relationship, all these things. But the one thing that I know that's depicted by this whole thing here is that if I don't take action, there will be no chance to measure what could have been against what was saved. Meaning this, you can lose money, right? Yeah. Unless what you're embarking on puts your life at risk, there's truly, in my opinion, no reason that you shouldn't take that journey because, listen, man, you can always make more money, right?
True story.
People get so caught up and lost in this 9-to-5 grind. And what they don't realize, and what plagues me so, is that people don't realize, You know, they say, well, I don't want to go work for myself. That's volatile, right? If I screw up, there's no paycheck. If I don't make the sale, if I don't make the money, there's no money at the end of the week. It's like, guess what, pal? Verizon, if they don't make the appropriate bids and the appropriate management selections and the appropriate marketing scheme, they're not going to be profitable. You're going to get laid off. You're right back where you started. You go work at the corner store for the guy that has the market. He gets a drug addiction. His wife leaves him and takes half. Any other particular variable comes into play.
Right.
They're just a human. They're just a business owner, just like you could be. So my stance on that whole thing is, why not be the guy that holds the, that holds the reins to the wagon, so to speak. Moving forward, we're going to wrap it up, Chris. Anything you'd like to leave the audience with?
Oh, I appreciate you having me on. It's
No problem, brother.
been an honor.
It's been a pleasure, man. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks for educating me on how we met, because Alzheimer's setting, I have virtually I remember, you know how many people I've told go grab a movie?
Oh, God. Well, it probably,
it softens the blow on what they thought they were going to get. A lot of times
100%.
I would use that as a kind of a
with me, you did it as I was already walking out the door.
Gift.
So I felt like it was like a gesture.
Yeah, I wish I could remember, but like I'm trying
Band-Aid
to.
on your
Maybe show
asshole
me a
as you leave.
picture, and maybe if I can see you when you were, how much lighter were you?
Oh, God.
100 pounds lighter?
Almost exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
100
See,
pounds
that's
later.
like a totally different person.
It is. It is.
That's probably
I showed
why
a picture to a friend the other day of me back at that time, and they didn't want to look at it. They're like, "No, dude, I can't see you like that. It's not. It's a miserable thing to look at." But guys, you can check Chris out. He's the Pawn King. He's got 8 locations.
Yeah, 8 locations if you're interested in anything, buying, selling, pawnkingny.com.
Okay.
Yeah, we just revamped the website, so there's a bunch of inventory up there. You can check out, all the jewelry selection and everything.
Guys, I got an air conditioner in the studio. I think it came from one of Chris's stores. The stone that's on my wife's hand is a beautiful stone, and he didn't even. There was a whole story behind where it came from, and it was a high quality stone. And it's funny. We brought that stone to a jeweler that was trying to sell us in a ring. Sell us a ring in a mall jeweler. Tried to sell me a $42,000 engagement ring. She looked at this stone and she said, "This is nicer than anything I could have sold you." Okay, and that's a fact. Whether she was accurate or not, I don't know. She'd been in the business 20-something years, and she was a straight shooter to the point where I gave her $200 as a thank you because I didn't buy a piece of jewelry from her, and we asked her a lot of questions, and we put her through the ringer. But, my point being, just because Chris is a pawnbroker does not mean he does not have access to top quality goods. Oh, yeah. So if you're looking to, relieve yourself of a $50,000, $100,000 jewelry collection, this is your guy. If you're looking to sell an estate that is very, very high dollar stuff, Chris is very well versed in anything from, a $20 Casio watch all the way up through to a piece of property that's hundreds of thousands of bucks. So don't sell him short, okay? Good guy here, good guy to pay attention to. Not going anywhere anytime soon. Appreciate you being here, Chris. Guys, you know what to do, all right? Go get it. Go make your money. Go find people like Chris to align yourself with, and get free. Stay free. Thanks, Ruben. Good show, guys.
Are we off?
We are good.
All that water, you know where that's going.